Hi everyone, my name is Matthew Moser and I'm a software engineer at Itemus. This is the first of a four-part video series that will go over the Tara process. The Tara process consists of four steps: the item definition, asset identification and impact rating, threat analysis, and then finally determining the risks. In this video, we'll be going over the item definition step and how to perform it within our security analyst tool. So to start, we need to understand what an item definition is. An item definition can be thought of as a written collection of all functions, data, components, channels, and assumptions about a product that we're trying to sell. We need to identify all the physical and logically inferred requirements for that project to work. And in order to start this project, we need to first define what the scope of our current Tara is going to be. For the sake of this example, we're going to keep it fairly small, but it can range from anywhere from a single ECU all the way up to an entire vehicle with an autonomous driving feature. Again, for the sake of this demonstration, we're going to keep this pretty simple. So the scope of this project is just going to be an ECU connected to an interface panel. So in order to start this process, we need to go and create a new project. I have one open here already, but we're going to go ahead and create a new one. Project name, we're just going to call it My Tara. We're going to be using ISO 21434 method configuration catalog and the predefined composition. Everything here looks good, so we're going to hit OK. Yes, we'll open it up in this window. Just let it build for a second. So now we have our Tara project built and we're ready to start actually working on it. And at this point, we can start with our item definition, and there are two primary ways to do this. You can either do so via the visual system diagram found within the item definition folder, or you can do what we call system chunks, which are found right here. These are text-based representations of your item definition. For the sake of simplicity, we're going to stick with this visual method first, and we're going to go ahead and create our item definition. Now, we did decide that we were going to be using a ECU and a interface panel and have the two connected. So we have two components already identified. So we'll go ahead and create two components here. You can resize them, move them around as we need to, and we can go ahead and rename these. So I'll call this one the ECU. I'll call this one the, what was I calling it, interface panel. And then we can have a data flow connecting the two, and we can change that and make it look a little bit nicer. And we can even establish that both of these are communicating with one another and sending information back and forth. If we're looking at the inspector, we can see additional information regarding whatever aspect of our item definition that we're looking at. So for our ECU here, we can see different types of stored data, different technology tags that we could apply to the project itself, or different assigned functions. When I look for the assigned functions here and I'm looking for the drop-down menu, nothing shows up because I haven't assigned any sort of functions within the system already. That would be done through the system chunk. But utilizing this system diagram, you can actually fully create your item definition. So if we're looking to add data to our ECU and interface panel, we can go ahead and say ECU data. We'll call this interface data. Then we can even see, by going over to our inspector for things, we can see that stored data within the ECU is ECU data. If I wanted to add another instance of data being stored, say another instance of the interface data is being preserved here for whatever reason, I can go ahead and do so, and it essentially creates a clone of that existing data set that we have here within our interface panel. If we wanted to say that this was a different instance of data, we would go ahead and create a new data set. So we would just drag and drop it, and then we could change the name. But that's one way that you could reuse different bits of your pre-existing item definition within your project. So the system diagram method is a very, very helpful way to just simple drag and drop all of your facets of your item definition and really get the broad outline done is kind of how I like to look at this part of the tool. And then when you're looking to do a bit more specific editing of certain elements, I tend to actually go back over to the text-based approach. And with this, we can see our components here. We have our system, which is the very top level component that we have is just the system in its entirety. And then we have our ECU and interface panel. Within here, again, we can add different technology tags that we're looking to, but one thing that you'll notice already is that we can add different types of components to this particular component. So if we wanted to add a sibling, so it would be on the same level and not directly related to one another, but they would just be within the same hierarchy of your program, you could add a sibling component. I'll just go ahead and rename this to sibling ECU. And then if I wanted to add a child component, which is a direct descendant of a sibling component, I could go ahead and do that. I can name this child ECU. And what's really helpful about this tool is that regardless of what view that you're looking to interact with the data, it could be done within either this text-based approach or it could be done within a system diagram. Those changes are just ways to represent the data within the program. So regardless of how you're making those entries, you will be able to access that information regardless of the view. So in this instance, I created sibling ECU and child ECU within the text-based approach. I can go over to the system diagram. We now see that sibling ECU has child ECU here, and sibling ECU is at the same hierarchical level as the ECU itself. So regardless of the view that you're using, your changes are going to be preserved and you're going to be able to use whatever workflow is more effective for you and not have to worry about, okay, well, does someone else use a different workflow? Will I be able to access this information? It's all going to be there. Now, because we've defined this particular Tara as just an ECU and interface panel, that was the scope that we defined, we've technically finished the item definition step of this process. So if we're happy with this and this is everything within our scope, we can move on to the next part of the Tara process. So join me next time when we discuss the second step, asset identification and impact rating.